Welcome back to Deadball TV, guys. We got another long-form, comprehensive recap of everything that happened in Asian World Cup qualifying, and today's video is going to be all focused on Group B. Like I've done in the other videos, I'm going to run through how the table looks right now, and then I got my talking points and my takeaways for all the 6 teams in this group. If you guys like videos about Asian football, make sure you hit subscribe, share the channel with a friend who might also like Asian footy, and make sure you check us out on social media. Links in the description. Let's get right into it because there's a lot to say here. I'm going to start with the group and how it looks after match day 8. In first, we have South Korea in first on 16 points. Jordan in second on 13. Iraq in third with 12 points. Oman in fourth with 10. Palestine in fifth on 6 points. And Kuwait last in the group on 5 points. And what I really like about this group is that everybody's still kind of alive. Even Kuwait down there, I still think they got a chance. I really do. And Palestine, goodness gracious, after the game they just had, I mean, I don't think anybody wants to play Palestine next. And then you got, of course, Jordan and Iraq battling for that second. Then you got Oman just chilling there like, hey, nobody really talks about us, but we're in fourth, and maybe we go up to third. I mean, who knows? I absolutely love the chaos in Group B. But I do have to start with Iraq. And chaos and the Iraqi national team are like peanut butter and jelly right now. 2-2 draw at home against Kuwait in Basra. 2 goals in stoppage time that avoid an absolute disaster for Iraq. A disaster that kind of ended up happening anyways in the Palestine game. But I think with the Palestine one, I have my reasons for why that happened, and I think it's somewhat of an excusable result. But if you lose at home to Kuwait as Iraq, inexcusable, and I think Jesus Casas, who has been relieved of duty, would have been sacked immediately following the game. I do think there's something to be said about Kuwait, where they are better than everybody expected. I do think that Iraqis took these fixtures in this window for granted because, right, they didn't have games against the big boys in Group B. There wasn't a Jordan game this window. There wasn't a South Korea game this window. It was the bottom teams, and they make it out with a point. I mean, this was abysmal from a result standpoint for the Iraqi national team. They needed minimum 3 points here, and to walk away with 1 is the reason that Jesus Casas is relieved of duty. But I think there's massive questions about this squad, which I will get into. Let me not get too far ahead of myself. What I thought was interesting about the Kuwait game was I think you could make the argument it was the first game where Iraq's attack actually did something, but also looked better in the second half, right? I feel like if you look at the Palestine game, the 2-1 loss, that was much more of the stereotypical Iraqi performance that we have come to know and love, or to know and hate, depending on who you are, where it's a pretty solid first half. Iraq controls the game. Ayman Hussein inevitably scores, which he did against Palestine, and then Iraq forget how to play football and just sit back and turn into a footballing equivalent of a punching bag. They're just like, hey, just come at us again and again and again, and we're going to survive, or at least that's what they had been able to do up until this Palestine game. Kuwait was really the first time where I think because it was in Basra and the fans would not have accepted a 2-0 defeat against Kuwait, where they had to go for it. And I think Iraq were lucky to get the point, honestly, even in this game. But just something I found was interesting because we hadn't really seen Iraq turn it on in the second half because they haven't really needed to. They've gotten the goal. They've gotten the lead in these games. And then Casas has decided to throw the rest of the match, and he eventually got bit in the butt. I already mentioned the result in the Palestine game, the 2-1 loss. I think Iraq in the first half were great, and then in the second half, probably from minute 60 onwards, it was all Palestine. It was like Iraq couldn't even hold the ball. It's probably the worst half that they've played. I'm pretty comfortable saying that so far. And it's because Palestine have the tools to actually hurt you, the tools that, Oman really just don't have up top, even though Oman were basically knocking on the door for an equalizer in both the games against Iraq. And truth be told, y'all, at the end of the day, Palestine 100% deserved to win this game. You would have thought that Iraq was playing prime Spain the way that they were pinned down. It was inexcusable, and it's the reason that Jesus Casas has lost his job. And I want to transition to that now because the 2 reasons Jesus Casas has been sacked as a Iraq manager is it's not the results. It's the performance and the dip in form happening at the same time, right? Because if you look at just results, Iraq in the last window, the 2022 qualifying cycle, after 10 games, they had 9 points. Through 8 games in this cycle, Iraq has 12 with 2 games to play. 2 pretty tough games, but still 2 games to play. Now, of course, 2022 was a different beast entirely because Iraq were still unable to play games at home. I believe every single one of their home games happened in Qatar, but maybe they happened somewhere else in the Middle East. Now in this cycle, Iraq are able to play games at home, and so they've no doubt benefited from that. But what's really resulted in Casas losing his job is that the performance of Iraq, how they've been playing football, has genuinely been on a downward trajectory for over a year now, like even going before the Asian Cup. But since the Asian Cup, this was a team that proved that they can go out and they can score 2 goals a game if they really want to. They showed that in round 2, even when they, albeit we're playing weaker teams, Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, they proved that we can go out there and we can get results. And then in round 3, I just think Jesus Casas and his technical staff turned into cowards, honestly. And I know that's a strong word to use, but it's true. They had no desire to really put games away. And I'm almost thinking if the job proved too big for Jesus Casas, right? It almost seemed like after the Asian Cup, all of a sudden expectations were placed on the team, at least from people who watch Asian football that are not Iraqi, and any neutrals. Instantly after that Japan win, put the microscope on this team. People were paying attention now. And it's like Jesus Casas, once he lost the underdog card, he didn't know what to do. He was a deer in headlights every single game in round 3. Look, did the guy deserve to get sacked? I think it's a gamble, but I'm going to lean yes. And my main reasons for that I already cited is the team's just getting worse in terms of performance. Yes, they're still getting some wins every once in a while, but it just hasn't been great. And 2, y'all, we're 8 games in to round 3, and this man still doesn't know his best 11. He's playing musical chairs with the Iraqi 11 every single game. He's being bailed out time and time again by Ayman Hussein or by some last-minute heroics by, Ibrahim Bayesh. Now that Casas is gone, the next guy who comes in here absolutely must get them to the World Cup. You cannot sack Jesus Casas and not advance now, because then we're going to be looking back and saying, okay, it wasn't pretty, it was ugly, it was so boring, and yes, these were bad results this window, but maybe we should have stuck with him. Maybe we should have held the faith a little bit more. So the new manager coming in, I would say the positive is that he has a lot of pieces to play with here. This Iraqi team is talented. The bad news is he has no time to make a mistake. His first game is South Korea at home, a South Korean team that is literally better on the road than they are playing in Korea. And then you got Jordan away in the final match day. There is no margin for error. Right? And then immediately after that, it's round 4. And who knows what happens then? What if Iraq draws Saudi Arabia and UAE in a group, or Saudi Arabia and Qatar potentially? Yeah, Qatar aren't great defensively, but they're going to score goals in this Iraqi team, right? This is a gamble, right? And all of a sudden, Iraq, man, this is the problem with them. This is why they're so frustrating. They've been riding on a knife's edge all of qualifying. They've been barely getting results. 1-0 Merchants. And it was only a matter of time before things went south. And they have gone super south. Now, do I think Iraqi fans overinflate their national team? Do I think Iraqi fans believe they are better than they actually are? Yes. But I think under Jesus Casas, this team was probably playing at 60% capacity. And the reason I say that is because we saw what a 90% capacity Iraq looks like. We saw it at the Asian Cup. We saw it in round 2. We saw it in games before the Asian Cup even. And they have just gone down 5% every single game, right? If they were playing 90% in that last round of 16 game against Jordan, they've been going down 5% every single game since then. I have a couple other talking points for Iraq, and one is the offense. And I think Jesus Casas plays a big part to play in how incompetent they've been recently. And when I say recently, I'm talking a lot of games, right? So just in round 3 alone, Iraq have 8 goals scored through 8 games. Simply unacceptable. But if you want to go even further, In the last 12 matches, Iraq have scored more than 1 goal twice. That is so bad, y'all. That is something that if I looked at the records for the other teams in Group B, Oman, Palestine, Kuwait, Jordan, I would love to see how many times those teams, the teams that Iraqis consider beneath them, how many times they've scored more than 1 goal in the last 12 games. I'm going to bet for every single one of those teams, it is more than 2. And for this Iraqi squad, that's not good enough. I also want to talk about Ali Jassim very quickly because I think his form is concerning. Was he better against Kuwait than he was against Palestine? Sure, but he did nothing in the Palestine game. And this is a guy who, if you look at how the other starlets are doing for other teams across Asian qualifying, not just in Group B, he's really dropping down the rankings of the breakout star of this campaign to the point where he's absolutely not considered a top 5 breakout star anymore. And I think some of that is the situation at club where he's not playing at Como, and then he goes to an Eredivisie squad, Almeria City, I think is how you pronounce it, and he's still not getting minutes there. I would be a little concerned now for Ali Jassim, and I'm curious if the next manager makes a ballsy decision to put him on the bench and maybe bring on just him as a super sub. Not that I think he's a terrible player, he's got no future, but I gotta call a spade a spade. He hasn't been good enough. He has not been helping out enough. I think there's a case for him to become a substitute. Of course, he should be part of the squad. I'm not saying that. That'd be crazy, but a starter, he doesn't have the resume to say that he's locked in at this point. And lastly, Iraq have really set themselves up here for a extremely difficult end to qualifying. If you look at Casas and his strategy and how they've approached games here, they have essentially put themselves in a position where they need wins against Korea and Jordan. That's not where you want to be, right? You want to be one of these teams. You want to be in a situation where you walk in here and you're like, all right, we can get 2 draws and we're good. Right, 2 draws against Korea and Jordan, and we're qualified in second. Or maybe we need 3 points, right? We can afford to lose one of these games, and we have to win the other one, and we're going to finish in second place. But because of the performances, man, I mean, they need minimum, 4 probably? 4 points to get it done? It's not impossible, right? I don't think beating Jordan away from home is impossible. Korea have already done it. But it's going to be really freaking hard, and it didn't have to be this way, right? It really, really didn't have to be this hard. I still think that Iraq will do well in round 4, even if they finish 3rd, but what could have been, I guess is what I'm getting at here. I am going to move on to Oman next. 1-1 draw away in South Korea, and a 1-0 win away in Kuwait City. And I'm not going to lie, this is an A+ window for Oman. This is one of the national teams that were the biggest winners, because getting a point to Korea is something I did not think that they could do. Granted, their goal was much more so a South Korean error and mistake and an injury to Lee Gang-in as it's happening than it was Omani brilliance, but still, a point's a point. Korea didn't do enough to put Oman in the back foot in this match. And then to win away in Kuwait is more impressive than I think people. Right, you just look at the fixture and you're like, win in Kuwait, that ain't that hard. Well, Jordan couldn't do it and Iraq couldn't do it. So it isn't that easy, right? And Oman have now done it. And this was a team that I thought were going to be eliminated by this point in qualifying. Maybe not outright eliminated, but I didn't think they would be in a comfortable position in 4th place. I thought they would be where Palestine are now on 6 points, something like that. I thought this was going to be a real gauntlet of a window here for Oman, and instead they passed with flying colors. I said in my preview that Oman, in my opinion, had benefited greatly from playing 4 of their 6 games at home so far. And I think in the 2 away games we had seen, they lost both of them. And they lost both of them, 5-0 on aggregate? It wasn't looking good. The Jordan game in particular was a beatdown. And then they play 2 games on the road here and they walk away with 4 points. And so for Oman, huge dub, right? And I think the key for them in this window was being clinical. They had 4 shots on goal, 2 goals. Sometimes it's that simple, folks. And also, if you look at the defense, similar to Bahrain, I think these are very crazy similar national teams, crazy similar strengths and weaknesses. They're very good at not conceding great chances to the opposition. Oman in this window allowed 20 shots total, only 4 of those on target, 1 goal conceded. So they were letting other teams, shoot from outside the box, win a couple contested headers, but nothing crazy. They're not allowing tap-in opportunities. They're not allowing shots from right outside the 6-yard box. They did a really good job defensively as a unit. I will shout out a couple players. Amjad Al-Harthi, the right back. I thought he had a great window. His cross for the goal in the Kuwait match was so good. They have Salah, who's kind of I don't know if he's a central midfielder or a winger. He can play in both positions, and he is a saucy player. I remember him against Saudi Arabia at the Asian Cup. He was the one guy that when the match was over, I was like, who is that dude? Because he is a baller. So definitely an underrated Asian talent. And Al-Sabi, the striker up top. He's kind of the Ayman Hussein, really, really good up top, big body, strong center forward. Is he amazing? No, but he's exactly what Oman need. And I think these guys together, a unit that knows exactly how they need to play. I think Jaber, the head coach, has done a hell of a job improving them from their previous manager. And y'all, round 4, this is more than possible now for Oman. I'm not going to say my thesis of Oman has changed that much. I still don't think they're a particularly special national team. I don't think Bahrain are special either, but they're consistent and they know their assignments. Very similar to Bahrain, and they're executing their game plan very well. So I think 50% you got to shout out the players. 50% you have to shout out Jaber, the manager, because I didn't know what this guy was going to do. And he's come in here and done a fantastic job. And lastly, I want to say that I think we've seen enough data to suggest that the Gulf Cup means absolutely nothing except for Oman, right? Because if we look at the other teams that participated, Bahrain made the final of the Gulf Cup, 0 points, easily their worst window in March. Saudi Arabia, we're scoring a bunch of goals in the Gulf Cup. It looked like, maybe the offense has figured it out. Nope, 1 goal in 2 games this window, right back to where they started. Kuwait made the semifinals. They also hosted the Gulf Cup. They looked okay. They were solid against Iraq. They weren't bad against Oman, but you can't really say that they improved because of the Gulf Cup. And I guess you got Iraq, who were grouped to the Gulf Cup and then had a disastrous window, their worst window of qualifying. So maybe in Iraq, the Gulf Cup also applies too, but in a bad way. But yeah, I think if you can look at indicators of continued form for 2 out of the 8 participating teams, I'm not really sure that's enough to say that the Gulf Cup influences qualifying. But I did think that was interesting, and I wanted to highlight that for you guys. Let's move on to Jordan next. 3-1 victory against Palestine in the first match. I talked about this already. I do not think this was a 3-1 victory for Jordan. I do not think the performance was great. I don't think any questions were answered about the Jordanian national team. It's a massive 3 points. They could not have dropped this game. But really in both matches against Palestine, to win 6-2 on aggregate, I think flatters Jordan how they played. I don't think they were terrible, but again, I don't think they beat Palestine by 4 goals. I don't think the performance suggests that. But yeah, against Palestine, Jordan get 2 goals from their CBs and then a Assassin's Creed pickpocket style goal from Al-Tamari. A goal is a goal. You cannot. You need set piece goals. You need your center backs to step up in big moments like this. Al-Arab and Nasib both getting one, but it wasn't like Jordan created a ton of chances. In fact, Palestine created more chances than Jordan in this game. But hey, Jordan capitalized. They were clinical. They walk out the 3-1. And then you get the Korea game where Jordan conceded early off a set piece to EJ Sung of all people. And I'm thinking, God damn it, here we go. Here we go. I don't know how ugly this is about to get. This was the worst possible type of goal to concede against Korea away from home. And to Jordan's credit, the way the team responded in the first half was amazing. I think it was some of the best football we've seen from Jordan during this qualifying process for probably, minute 25 until the conclusion of the first half. They get the equalizing goal through Al-Mardi. It's a good passage of play. Right before that, Yazan Al-Naimat had a couple moments himself. And then in the second half, Jordan, they didn't really go for it anymore. I think they just wanted the point. I think that was the objective. And they didn't concede too many big chances, although I would be a bit concerned how vulnerable they looked aerially. I think South Korea won a lot of corners. I think Al-Bonadi especially really needs to get a bit better in the air, especially when he's defending big center backs and center forwards. But it was still a point for Jordan. They walk out of here with 4. I think that is mission accomplished. I know a lot of Jordanians wanted the away victory in South Korea, especially after they saw that Oman was able to get a point there. But I still think in this window, man, still wasn't great from Jordan's attack. It wasn't phenomenal from Al-Tamari. He didn't look like himself, although he had a couple moments. Yazan, I think he also had a couple moments, but he really wasn't ever on the same page as Al-Tamari. And I think Al-Mardi kind of ghosted in the Palestine game and was better against South Korea, but it wasn't a vintage performance from him either. So, yeah, I think, like I said before, if Jordan are ever going to be back to how they were, beating Saudi Arabia, making the final of the Asian Cup, you need the attack to be better. Was it, or I would say you need the attack to be at its best. Was it better than the last window? Maybe it was better than the last window. I'm not even 100% sure I would agree with that, but it wasn't good enough. We're still not seeing these guys fire at the same time. One of my main takeaways for Jordan after this window is I think they're 2 key positions away from being a really, really dangerous side, namely a central midfielder, ideally a box-to-box type, and a wingback. And I don't really care if it's on the left side or the right side, but a better wingback, somebody who's going to create more chances for the attack, and somebody who's, if they're not going to create chances, is a little bit more locked down defensively. At the central mid position, Amir Jamous is filling in for Al Rawabde, who tore his ACL or his meniscus or something. And I just don't think Jamous is that good. He got dribbled past 5 times in this window, the most of any player. He's not very good physically. He won 5 of his 18 duels in this window. Against Korea especially, he was pretty much just thrown around like a fish. And he averages 1 chance created per game, which is just not good enough, especially with the firepower of Jordan's attacking 3. You need a guy who's able to find the space a bit more. And I think if he's not going to be finding the space, then I think he needs to be a bit more of a true destroyer type 6, and he's not. So I think that's definitely a place Jordan could upgrade. At the wingbacks, Isan Haddad and Mohana Daba. Are these players terrible? No, they're not terrible, but I'm going to look back at the stats. 2 chances created combined from both players in this window. You cannot have your wingbacks creating 1 chance per game, both of them as a duo. It's not good enough. And I know that this probably isn't how the strongest possible Jordan would set up, with Al Rawabde being out and Ali Owan being unavailable in this game. You know, if one of those guys comes back, then Al Mardi can drop a little bit deeper into that central role, and he can be that creative outlet in the middle of the pitch. But with the injuries, with the guys who are unavailable, Jordan is just not that scary of a team still. I think the defense, the back 3 especially, I really, really like how these guys are playing. I think that is the back 3 Jordan need to run with until these guys just age out, basically. I think the goalkeeper's strong. But these holes in the team keep them from reaching their potential. And maybe it is as simple as Ali Owan coming back. Maybe it's as simple as Al Rawabde coming back. But I would like to see a different player be given an opportunity out wide at one of the wingback positions, probably the left back to start, to just see if they can give a little extra spice to this squad. Because these guys are simply not scary. And I thought Haddad in particular got cooked several times against South Korea and really put his team in some dangerous positions. And if it wasn't for a couple good saves and some good aerial interventions from Al-Arab, it could have been bad. But regardless, at the end of the day, Jordan walked out of this window with 4 massive points. They could not have dropped any more points, especially after their back-to-back draws against Kuwait. They needed to get a win, and they couldn't have lost in South Korea, and they did that. And now Jordan holds the advantage heading into the final window for that second place direct qualification. But I want to say their next match is away in Oman. And Muscat might not be the scariest place to play, but if Jordanians do not take this game seriously, they're not going to win, and they might even lose. All eyes, all focus need to be on the Oman match. I know that the Iraqi game is a much more emotional fixture. It's one that everybody's had circled on the calendar since the groups were made. But if they take this Oman game for granted, Oman is strong enough, and Jordan have enough weaknesses and enough vulnerability for Oman to win that game. So just as a warning, that has to be the objective. You might even be in a position where South Korea beat Iraq and Jordan beat Oman, and then it doesn't even matter what happens in the last match day. That is the objective for Jordan. The objective is not to give it to a rival on the last match day. You want to still win that game, but you don't want it to come down to that. So you got to get the 3 points away in Muscat. I'm going to move on to South Korea next. 2 draws at home in this window. Koreans online are furious, and I think rightfully so. Were South Korea god-awful in both games? No, I don't think they were god-awful in the second half against Oman. I don't think they were god-awful in the first half against Jordan, but I also don't think this offense is that scary. And in the Jordan game in particular, they must have won 4, 5, 6 headers off crosses. Like, they were just physically dominant compared to the Jordanians. And they just couldn't really get any of them on target. And so I don't think the Jordan game offensively was a disaster, especially with Lee Gang-in being injured in the Oman game. Now, this team without Lee Gang-in, man, it just ain't the same. He's, I would say, the most important player. I think he's even more important than Son at this point for just the offensive flow of Korea. Like, the way that guy can create chances, the way he can beat his man off the dribble, even his finishing ability, it's irreplaceable for South Korea. And I think with him and Son at the same time, right, it's kind of like the opposition has to pick their poison. Okay, do we want Lee Gang-in to beat us, or do we want Son to beat us, right? And we just kind of have to play percentages here. But when one is unavailable and only one is playing in the game, it makes it a lot easier to mark South Korea and to kind of just let their other guys try to create chances. Their other wingers, they're not bad, but they're not amazing at beating their guys one-on-one. And so I think that all culminates in South Korea just becoming a bit predictable. Now, I just want to ask, because I think it's a fun question for any Koreans watching and any neutrals as well. If Jordan finished second, right, and Oman or Palestine finish in fourth, and they go to round 4, and let's say they eventually qualify for the World Cup out of round 4, do we do a bit of revisionist history here where we look back on all these draws at home for Korea, and do we ever say, maybe it wasn't that bad? Because I'm one of the people where I've always thought that Korea, they're placed in the top 3 of Asia's hierarchy. They still are a top 3 team, but they don't have the divine right to be a great inside the AFC. And if they don't come out and perform in qualifiers, they're going to drop points, and they've drawn 4 games so far in qualifying. So I didn't think that the Jordan draw at home was that bad. I didn't think drawing one of the Palestine games was that bad. I think the fact that it's happened 4 times is bad, but still at the same time they also haven't lost. So I think there is a little silver lining in that, just for Koreans looking for any ounce of hope. But yeah, I'd be curious if Oman and Jordan qualify to the World Cup. Will Koreans at least have more respect for these teams and say, like, okay, we didn't beat them twice, but, maybe it wasn't that bad? I don't know. I have no idea what the response would be. Knowing the Korean fan base, it ain't gonna matter, and they're still gonna be super pissed that they weren't able to win these. I think the home form for South Korea is one of the biggest talking points. 1 win in 3 draws now for games inside the country. I will say, though, this is not unique for Korea, and I mentioned this in my Group C video, where I feel like the environments of the East Asian teams, China, Japan, and Korea, is absolutely being carried by the Chinese right now. I don't think Korean games are intimidating at all. I don't really think the atmosphere is that great. I think it's kind of here's the thing, and I don't mean this as an insult. Korea and Japan have family-friendly environments. Korea and Japan have a sanitized viewing experience for their fans. It's very focused on like chants and like clapping that goes on throughout the entire game, no matter what is happening. And it doesn't really pick up or dip down if Korea's starting to lose or if Japan's starting to win. It's kind of just this even-keeled, let's all go to the game and have a fun time, where I feel like the Arab countries in particular, and the Indonesians as well, you can feel the energy from the crowd. Like when Iraq equalized against Kuwait in Basra, the stadium almost lifted off the ground. I've never seen a Korean stadium like that. I've never seen a Japanese stadium like that. It's too sanitized for it to be this true epic home field advantage. I think the home field advantage that Korea and the Japanese have is that the other team's got to fly a long distance to get there. It's much more of like a fatigue thing. Maybe for Korea, it's a little bit of the weather as well. Korea gets freaking cold if you guys haven't been there. Japan does as well. And maybe some of the Middle Eastern teams aren't quite used to playing for that, but it's not scary. And so I'm just saying this not to excuse it. That's just my theory on why Korea has dropped so many points at home, because quite honestly, it's not an intimidating atmosphere at all, and it is not unique to Korea. Japan suffered from it as well. Only China is a kind of a scary place to play. I think the other explanation for that is that when a team visits Japan or a team visits Korea, they're going to be in a low block no matter what, right? Whenever Korea is the away side, that away team at least will have moments in which they feel like they need to attack. They will feel inspired by their fans to come out and play attacking ball, and I think that benefits Korea. But if I'm Kuwait or I'm Oman and I'm visiting South Korea, I probably have, maximum 100 fans in the stadium. I don't care about entertainment, right? It's like the Saudis when they went away against Japan. They didn't show up to entertain any Saudi Arabian fans. There was no pressure to go out and attack. They said, we want a point, period. We do not care about anything else. We did not come here to put on a bunch of makeup and look pretty for y'all. We're going to walk out of here with a black eye, maybe even two, and a busted lip. As long as we get the point, we don't care. You have to break us down. And of course, when you have to break down a low block, especially for South Korea, especially missing players, especially when you don't effing start Lee Gang-in, crazy, it's going to be difficult. And I think that's why we're seeing so many draws. I mean, Japan and Korea combined have 6 draws through 8 games at home. Excuse me, did I do my math right there? Sorry, no, it's actually 5 draws from 8 games at home. 2 wins for Japan, 1 win for South Korea. What the hell? If I'm the KFA or the JFA, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that my fans are paying such good money to see those results. It's not good enough from either team. I want to end the Korean segment by talking about the biggest problem for this team, and I don't mean personnel. I mean, like, what part of the pitch is not carrying their weight? And I think there's a lot of ways you could answer this, and I think everything has a part to play, right? But I'm going to say the offense is most responsible for Korea being in this position. Now, I think, of course, defense has a part to play, 100%. But I wonder if other people agree with me, looking at Korea, looking at the players they have, and looking at the fact that we have 14 goals scored through 8 games. Is that enough? Is that enough offensive output? On one hand, you would say no, because of the star power of Korea. They have a very talented attack that is all playing in Europe, all playing at good clubs. You would expect them to be able to get, maybe 15, 16, 17 goals, something like that. But on the other hand, you look at how South Korea performed in the last cycle under Paulo Bento, and in the entire 10 games of round 3, they scored 13 times. So actually, from an offensive standpoint, Korea is better now, numbers-wise, than they were before. I think part of that is the fact that Paulo Bento is not a good offensive manager whatsoever, and Korea won a lot of those games 1-0. It was not super exciting and inspiring football the entire time. And also, in this edition of qualifying, I think Korea's goals have come in bunches, right? 3 against Iraq, 3 against Oman, and then in the other games, it's kind of like a 1 goal there, a 1 goal there, and their defense isn't quite able to keep the pace. They're not able to win these games 1-0. Even as I'm saying this out loud, I'm still not sure what is more responsible, the offense or the defense, because for the offense, you say, how do you score 1 goal in 180 minutes against Palestine? But then for the defense, you say, y'all have only kept, 2 clean sheets in 8 games? That's not good enough. Of course, the answer is both, but I would love to hear from any Koreans watching if they would blame one section of the pitch more than the other for Korea's current situation. I can understand why the vibes are so low here, because the team, compared to how Japan and Iran look, are clearly, I think, the 3rd best team in Asia right now. I just want to take a second to say, what a freaking window for Palestine. I know that they lost 3-1 to Jordan, as I've said many times in this video and in other videos. They didn't deserve to lose 3-1. The performance didn't justify that. They were a good team. They created more chances. They just made 3 really idiotic defensive mistakes, and that is always going to be Palestine's Achilles heel, is they got 1 awful mistake in them per game, and the offense is still not a clinical side. But even for that to happen, to take the L against Jordan, and for qualification to be basically, it's do or die now, to then go and beat Iraq 2-1 in a comeback victory in which they got ran over in the first half, I think it speaks to the spirit of this team and the morale of this team, and I, like I said earlier, would not want to play these guys now, because I can guarantee you the belief is there. The second half against Iraq was probably the best football that Palestine had played in this qualifying. Wissam Ali gets the equalizer. I think it was in the 87th minute, something very late in the game. My man's got 3 goals now in round 3 of qualifying. I think he's got 3 goals in his 6 games for the Palestinian national team. And I want to ask, is he Palestine's MVP? Is he the MVP of Palestine's qualification campaign so far? right? I think you can make an argument for a couple other players. But regardless, how much did Palestine need this man at the Asian Cup, right? Can you imagine what they could have done? They probably would have beaten Qatar if they had him in that round of 16 game. I think his inclusion, his addition to this national team has been nothing short of huge, especially as his partner in crime, Oday Dabag, continues to be really underwhelming. 0 goals in round 3. Not only 0 goals in round 3, he has not scored since he had a hat trick in the first game of round 2 against Bangladesh. Since then, that would be 11 games in a row without a goal, maybe 12? Something like that. I know my guy scored 3 goals at the Asian Cup. I know he was a revelation for the team and a spiritual leader for the team at that point in time. But what have you done for me lately? I think Wissam Ali is completely bailing out Oday Dabag, who I'm not going to say he's been absolutely dreadful and is not contributing at all, but you can't be a center forward for Palestine, a team that creates this many chances and have 0 goals in over 10 games. That is unacceptable. Now, talking points for Palestine, I think they are the opposite to Iraq. And what I mean by that is it was only a matter of time before something good happened, right? With Iraq, it was a matter of time before everything came crashing down because of how they were narrowly winning these games and narrowly getting these draws. Palestine, you're looking at them kind of like North Korea, and you're like, how have they not won a game? How do these guys not have multiple wins on the resume? Because if you look at their performance and the numbers and the data, they're a top attacking side in Asia. All they've been doing is lacking the goals. And even when they do score goals, which isn't often enough, they only have 7 in the first 8 games of qualifying, the defense usually lets them down, has at least 1 howler, and they draw or lose the game. But I just felt like eventually the numbers had to result in 3 points. I said as much in my preview. And finally, we got a Palestine that was clinical with their chances. 4 big chances created in this window, 2 converted. They were, of all the 18 teams still participating, a bottom 3 side when it came to big chance conversion rate so far. And this is nothing short of a historic window for these guys. I mean, y'all, they outshot Iraq and Jordan in this window. Palestine outshot Iraq and Jordan, a team that made the Asian Cup final, a team that made the Asian Cup round of 16, both teams that had a direct qualification as the objective walking into this phase of qualifying, and Palestine arguably outplayed them both. I mean, it's an incredible story. And I have to shout out one more player for Palestine in particular, Adam Qaid. Wow. What a baller. You guys will recognize him because he's got the long curly hair. You will know when he's on the ball, not just because of that, but because he's absolutely saucy. He probably had the greatest super sub performances I've seen from an Asian player ever. He did not start either game for Palestine in this window and had the most chances created of any Palestinian. He had 5 chances created in 50 minutes played of football, and he had both assists in the Iraq game. I mean, and by the way, y'all, if you're asking who the heck is Adam Qaid, I'm right there with you. This was his debut for Palestine. This was his debut for the national team. What a freaking pickup. I don't know if I've seen a debut like this. You know what? This is actually a great question down below. Better debut for the national team, Ale Ramani for Indonesia or Adam Qaid for Palestine? Great comparison. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. I'm not sure why he hadn't debuted before. I was looking at his transfer mark. It did seem like he played several games for the Swedish U20s and U17s. Maybe he was waiting on a call-up, whatever. Sweden's got a pretty good attack. Maybe he said, hey, I'm not breaking in here. Let me go to Palestine. And what a pickup. I mean, him and Wissam Ali, you're talking about 5 goal involvements in 8 games from those 2 new players to Palestine. Unbelievable. This team, man, they're really glowing up. If they're a Pokemon, they're evolving from Trico into Grovyle, right? We're not quite at the Sceptile level, but maybe they're going to get there soon because, again, the performance has just been so good. Last talking point here, the manager. Daboub was relieved of his duties, and I had an eyebrow raised like Carlo Ancelotti when I read the news about that because I felt like it was a little harsh. In comes Ihab Abu Jazar, who is Palestinian ethnically, I believe, and he gets a win against Iraq in his second game, which is easily the best result of this current Palestinian generation. I had been critical of Palestine because while I think they had played well and maybe gotten a couple good draws, they never really got a good win, right? Beating Hong Kong, I'm sorry that doesn't qualify. Now they got a massive win. This is absolutely a statement win. You guys, if you watch Deadball TV, you know I am Mr. Statement Win. That is what I look for all the time before I start putting flowers on national teams too hard. And now Palestine have it. And so, do I think Daboob would have never gotten a win here? No, because I think the foundation that he had with his team, I think it was a matter of time. Same with Shin Tae-yong. I think it was a matter of time before he beat another team outside of Saudi Arabia. So I'm not going to say that Jazar is like the god of Palestinian football, but the fight that these guys showed, you have to give him as a manager credit for that second half against Iraq. And now Palestine, man, they are absolutely in the fight to finish in fourth. They're going to need a great window. They're going to need probably 6 points in the next window. But the fact that they're still in it at this stage, massive dub. And I'm going to end with Kuwait. 2-2 draw away in Basra against Iraq. I've already talked about this a lot. I thought Al-Rashidi, the goalkeeper, probably had the best goalkeeping performance of anybody I've seen, outside of maybe Togatayev against Uzbekistan. Those guys, those performances, absolutely elite. Please look up some of the saves that he made in this game. The Iraqi onslaught and the saves that he was making, commendable, but ultimately not able to get it done. Then there's the 1-0 loss at home to Oman. I thought this was a pretty even game from what I saw. Eventually, Kuwait conceded off a cross. This is something that they've done a couple times. I think South Korea maybe got 2 goals just like this against them. It's a great ball in from the right back and a bullet header from Al-Sabi to put it away. The goalkeeper doesn't have a chance here. There's too much pace on it. And at the end of the day, I think these were big points dropped for Kuwait because Kuwait has been a team that's been steadily getting better. Really, Palestine have steadily been getting better as well. Maybe Oman have steadily been getting better. Maybe I haven't been putting enough respect on them. But they could not have lost this. This was the game that you really needed to validate the progression with 3 points. I think BC needed 3 points here. And to not even get a draw and to lose, it just really looks like that round 4, it's not impossible yet, but gosh darn it, is it going to be really, really tough now. Just like Palestine, they got to win out. I think a big reason for not being able to beat Oman was Yusuf Nasser was not available for this game. And simply put, if you're a team like Kuwait, you cannot afford to have arguably your best player and your top goal scorer all time in the history of the national team. You just can't afford to lose that guy, especially not at home in front of your home fans. I talk about depth all the time with these Arab teams, especially these tier 2, tier 3 teams that rely on counterattacking mainly. When you lose the guy that scores the goals in your counterattacking side, I mean, adios, goodbye, good luck. It's going to be really tough for you to do anything. In Oman, they are pretty good defensively. They're a naturally defensive side, so you were never going to get too many opportunities in this game. And I think Kuwait maybe had 1 big chance, maybe 2 if I'm being generous in the whole game. And honestly, we're lucky to not concede at the end. Oman had a 3-on-1 and couldn't put the shot on target, so not a great match day 8 for the Kuwaitis. I'm not going to be too harsh on Kuwait for not being able to win away to Iraq because I think they were very clinical. They maybe had 4 shots, 2 goals, or 3 shots, 2 goals, something crazy like that. Nasser with a brace. Mohammed Aham assist, by the way. Guy continues to cook. I told you guys. I told Iraqis, man, I said, watch out. I told Iraqis to watch out for this Kuwait game, and I told Iraqis to watch out for Palestine, and look what happened. They're walking away with 1 point. Anyways, I'm a bit disappointed Kuwait couldn't win this game because I think it would have been awesome for the vibes. Like, if Kuwait, Oman, and Palestine were basically even on points heading into the last window, I mean, gosh, the drama would have been insane here. All that being said, I kind of think Kuwait are still overperforming, and maybe Kuwaitis will be insulted by that. But I think if you had asked me before round 3 started, if Kuwait had 5 points after 8 games with 2 still left to play, dub or L, I would have definitely said that was a W. Genuinely, I thought Kuwait would have 2 points at this stage of qualifying. That's how poor they looked in round 2, and that's how bad they were before qualification even started. Now, Kuwait's last 2 matches are Palestine at home and South Korea away. Palestine at home is a must-win for both teams. It was a 2-2 draw, a super epic, entertaining draw last time these 2 teams played. That might have to be a live stream. I think that one's just going to go so hard. And then South Korea away, I mean, if Oman, Jordan, and Palestine can all get draws away in Korea, why not Kuwait? I'm not saying it's going to happen. That's not a prediction, but Kuwaitis have to be walking in there with some belief that they can do something, especially South Korea that might already be directly qualified and might not even care. So, gosh, Group B is it's just freaking epic. I've loved every single moment of this group. We've had so many disappointments. We've had so many surprises. We've had shootouts, great saves, epic moments from this group. This is why Asian qualifying is goated. But I think I'm going to end the video there, guys. This is long enough. I hope you enjoyed this complete diatribe, deep dive. This could probably be a 3-credit hour college course on Asian football that I've just delivered to you guys over the past couple of days. So if you enjoy this and you find it entertaining and you like listening to me talk about Asian football and you want to support the channel, we do have a Patreon. The link is in the description of this video. If you want to subscribe on there, it would really help me out. It would help me create more content about Asian football, which I know you guys want to see. And if you guys could share the channel, share the podcast with a friend who might like Asian football, that's the best way that you guys can help grow Deadball TV, is to shout it out on your socials, tag a friend in it, just send a friend a direct link to the channel, anything like that. It would be much appreciated. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to smash the like button, hit subscribe for more AFC content here on Deadball TV, and I'll see you guys in the next one.